The hushed, opulent halls of the Viridian collection were Elara Vance's second home. For 8 years she, a quiet force with a meticulous eye, had breathed life back into canvases and sculptures centuries old, a skill she'd honed since childhood. Her hands, often stained with pigments and solvents, were a testament to her dedication, but in the upper echelons of Viridian, her craft was admired more than her intellect. Elara, a single mother to Leo, a bright-eyed 7-year-old whose drawings already showed an uncanny depth, knew her place in this old-money institution was precarious. She was an invaluable technician, not the esteemed connoisseur, a distinction Sterling Thorne, head of acquisitions and a powerful board member, never failed to subtly underscore. Sterling Thorne embodied Viridian's rigid traditions, a man of imposing stature and an even more imposing family legacy. He spoke with an air of inherited authority, his pronouncements on art and people rarely challenged. His prejudice, like a faint yellowing varnish on an old painting, was subtle but pervasive. Elara had observed it in his dismissive glances during her conservation presentations, his condescending praise for her dexterity, and the ease with which he approved acquisition budgets for pieces championed by his white male colleagues, while hers faced intense scrutiny. The annual spring gala was a whirlwind of champagne flutes and hush bids. Elara, having ensured the new Da Vinci acquisition was perfectly lit, was preparing to leave when she spotted Sterling. He wasn't merely tipsy. He was slumped against a grand column in the vestibule, askew, muttering incoherently about market values. His driver, unusually, was nowhere to be found. Recognizing a potential scandal for the gallery and a genuinely helpless man, Elara, out of a profound sense of decency and caution, offered to drive him home. She settled him into his luxury sedan, drove him to his sprawling uptown penthouse, and helped him, largely unconscious, to his apartment door. As she propped him against the frame, she quickly snapped a time-stamped photo with her phone, a blurry shot of him in his designer suit, slumped against his ornate front door, a personal safety measure learned from years of navigating unpredictable situations. She left a brief note, "Got you home safely," Elara, on his entryway table, and departed. The next morning, the hallowed silence of Viridian was shattered by a summons from Sterling's office. Elara found him impeccably dressed, a predatory glint in his cold blue eyes. He held up his phone, a photo on the screen showing him disheveled, lying in his own bed. "Did you truly think I wouldn't find out, Elara?" Sterling's voice was a low growl. "A woman like you in my house, taking advantage of my vulnerability? It's brazen." He leaned forward, his gaze unwavering. "And frankly, I'm disgusted. People of your background often misunderstand boundaries, don't they? Always looking for an angle." Elara's breath hitched, but her composure remained. "Mr. Thorne," she replied, her voice steady, masking the storm within. "You were extremely intoxicated last night. I simply ensured your safe return home, as any decent person would do. The photo I took was merely to confirm my presence and departure for my own protection." Sterling laughed, a dry, dismissive sound. "Protection? Or leverage? Your word against mine, Elara. Who do you think the board will believe?" The insinuation was a poisonous dart. Elara knew this was not just about last night. It was about every subtle sign of prejudice she had endured for years, now coalescing into a direct threat. The game, she realized, had begun, and he had no idea she had been preparing for it for years. Sterling Thorne wasted no time. By Tuesday morning, an email from HR Director Cassandra Blythe landed in Elara's inbox. Urgent meeting regarding recent conduct. The air in the conservation lab, usually filled with the gentle hum of equipment, was thick with whispers. Colleagues, typically friendly, averted their gaze, as if Elara carried a contagious stain. Cassandra, a woman whose loyalty shifted with the prevailing winds of power, delivered the official news with a strained empathy. Ilera was suspended without pay, pending an internal investigation into inappropriate conduct. Cassandra subtly pressed, "If you admit to a lapse in judgment, Ilera, we can manage this quietly. A resignation for a clean record." In the HR conference room, Ilera found Sterling seated like a monarch, flanked by Cassandra and Viridian's stern legal counsel. Sterling reiterated his accusations, pointing to the photo on his phone with theatrical distress. "She invaded my privacy, humiliated me, and now she's going to pay for it." His predatory smile was a mask of unassailable confidence. Ilera listened, her eyes fixed on his, noting the calculated malice. Her mind drifted back through her life, a mosaic of challenges and triumphs. Raised in a vibrant but struggling neighborhood, Ilera had learned early that societal rules were often stacked against people like her. Her parents, first-generation immigrants, had hammered home the mantra, you must work twice as hard, be twice as smart, and leave no room for doubt. Her journey from community college to specialized art restoration had been a grueling ascent, each rung met with subtle skepticism, surprised professors, and a constant need to prove herself beyond question. She remembered Dr. Kenji Tanaka, her soft-spoken Japanese-American mentor at university, who had warned her about institutions like Viridian. The old guard, he'd said. They value pedigree over true merit, and they see challenges to their authority as personal affronts. Always protect yourself. Ilera, discretion and documentation are your most valuable tools. His words had become her creed. Years ago, after a particularly frustrating incident where Sterling had dismissed her expert analysis of a painting's provenance in favor of a less qualified, more connected opinion, Ilera had made a quiet decision. She discreetly installed a small, legally compliant voice recorder in her office, programmed to activate during formal meetings or any direct interaction with senior staff. She began meticulously documenting every microaggression, every dismissive comment, every instance where her work was subjected to undue scrutiny while less rigorous reports from white male colleagues sailed through. She built a network, too, of the marginalized artists, conservators, and gallery staff who had felt the subtle sting of Viridian's institutional bias. She had sensed a moment like this would eventually come, a reckoning where her integrity would be questioned, and she would need more than just her word. "Mr. Thorne," Ilera said, breaking the silence, her voice controlled, "I'm curious. You mentioned a former conservator, Ms. Sophia Lopez. She was dismissed 2 years ago, I believe, for incompetence, after she raised concerns about the authenticity of a painting you acquired. Do you recall that?" Sterling stiffened. "That's utterly irrelevant to this discussion. Ms. Lopez was dismissed for performance issues. Pure and simple." A subtle smile touched Ilera's lips. "Perhaps, but I've been in touch with Ms. Lopez recently. She's now pursuing a wrongful termination suit against the collection, citing a pattern of discriminatory practices. She claims to have some very interesting correspondence." Cassandra shifted uncomfortably. The seed of doubt, Ilera knew, had been planted. Ilera's suspension became an open secret, a heavy cloud over the conservation department. Sterling, emboldened by the gallery's swift action, continued to circulate his version of events, subtly painting Ilera as an opportunistic schemer who tried to exploit his good name. He held court in the executive lounge, lamenting the changing standards of professionalism and the desperate measures some employees would take to climb the corporate ladder, his words dripping with veiled contempt for Ilera's background. He believed he had won, that her silence meant submission. He had no ideas every hushed conversation, every self-congratulatory remark, was being silently archived. For Ilera, the suspension wasn't a punishment. It was an unexpected gift of time. Her first call wasn't to a general labor lawyer, but to Elena Petrova, a sharp-witted attorney known for dismantling seemingly impenetrable corporate hierarchies in discrimination cases. Elena's voice was instantly intrigued when Ilera introduced herself. "Ilera Vance? Dr. Tanaka mentioned you. He said you might have some unique insights into the culture at Viridian." At their first meeting in Elena's discreet downtown office, Ilera opened her laptop. She didn't have just insights. She had a fortress of evidence. First, meticulously organized spreadsheets detailing statistical disparities, promotion rates, salary increases, and critical feedback, reports for conservatives of color versus their white colleagues. The data, compiled over 2.5 years, painted a damning picture of systemic bias, consistently favoring one demographic while subtly sidelining others, often those with superior qualifications. Next, she presented encrypted files containing transcripts of internal communications and recorded snippets of conversations. These weren't overt slurs, but subtle microaggressions, condescending remarks about cultural understanding when discussing non-Western art with Ilera, dismissive tones when she proposed new conservation techniques, and an executive email thread where Sterling casually referred to the diversity quota hires as less of a cultural fit for Viridian's traditional aesthetic. But the real gem was in a separate, password-protected folder. Ilera clicked, and a 23-minute audio recording began to play. It was from an executive meeting, a discussion about Viridian's strategic direction. Ilera had subtly placed a miniature, motion-activated recorder in a seldom-used ventilation shaft outside the boardroom months ago, after realizing she was consistently excluded from meetings directly impacting her department. The recording captured Sterling Thorne and other board members openly discussing managing the optics of inclusion without diluting the collection's heritage. A specific segment made Elena lean forward. Sterling, his voice slurred from pre-meeting drinks, making a thinly veiled racist joke about a previous affirmative action hire, a bright young curator of Asian descent, implying she was only there for show. "She really tried to play the victim when we didn't renew her contract," Sterling had scoffed. "Some people just don't understand that true talent isn't found in a box-ticking exercise." Elena whistled softly. "How did you get access to this?" she asked, clearly impressed. Ilera smiled, a rare, unburdened smile. "Let's just say my first passion was forensic data analysis before art conservation. And when you're consistently excluded from the room, you find other ways to stay informed." Ilera then showed Elena the time-stamped photo from the night of the gala, proving she had left Sterling's apartment long before he claimed the compromising photo was taken. She even had a digital record of the building's internal security camera footage, showing her precise departure time. "He fabricated the incident. Elena, he took that photo himself after I left." Elena's eyes gleamed. "Ilera, this isn't just a wrongful termination suit anymore. This is a potential federal discrimination investigation. You have everything." Back home, Ilera found her son Leo drawing superheroes at the kitchen table. "Mama, why are you home during the week now?" he asked, his brow furrowed with concern. "Are you okay? You always say good people win in the end." Ilera knelt, hugging him tight. "I'm fixing some big problems at work, sweetie. And yes, good people always find a way. We just have to be smart and patient and always do the right thing." Leo, reassured, returned to his drawing, confident in his mother's promise. That unwavering faith was Ilera's fuel, her fiercest determination. This wasn't just about her. It was about ensuring Leo would never have to navigate a world where his potential was dismissed based on someone else's prejudice. With her immediate future hanging in the balance, Ilera activated a wider net. Her connections, originally formed through shared experiences of marginalization in the art world, now became vital allies. Anonymous tips about Viridian's discriminatory practices began to appear in niche art publications, detailing subtle patterns of bias in acquisitions, exhibitions, and hiring. These reports, initially dismissed by Sterling as disgruntled employee rumors, started to gain traction in broader cultural columns, questioning the traditional integrity of the Viridian collection. Sterling, still confident in his invulnerability, publicly shrugged off the sensationalist reports, believing they would fade. He continued to badmouth Alara to other executives, still unaware of her surveillance. Elena, meanwhile, was meticulously building their case. She leveraged Alara's extensive evidence to file a formal complaint with the Department of Antiquities and Arts Integrity, DAI, a powerful federal body overseeing ethical practices and governance in cultural institutions, particularly those receiving public funding or significant grants. The complaint cited systematic discriminatory practices and a hostile work environment, using the statistical data and recorded conversations as irrefutable proof. Elena said during a late-night call, "The DI is interested, very interested. Your company is on preliminary list for review regarding discriminatory practices. This means your evidence won't just help in a labor lawsuit. It could be the missing piece in a much larger federal investigation." "There's one more thing," Elena said, her voice quiet but firm. "The recording of Sterling's phone call after my suspension, his whole performance about problem employees and people like me try and play the race card. It's all documented, including the part where he essentially admits to orchestrating the situation." Elena played the clip, Sterling's arrogant voice echoing. "The problem with people like them, Margaret, is they don't understand appropriate boundaries. They grow up thinking they deserve the same treatment as people who have actually built something in life. And later, at least I took care of it before she tried to play the race card. A single Afro-Latina conservator against a respected white board member. Credibility still matters." Elena was silent for a moment. "Elena," she finally said, her voice low with gravity, "do you understand what this means? He's not just committing discrimination. He's orchestrating a conspiracy to harm an employee based on racial prejudice. And he was stupid enough to admit it on tape. That escalates this from an employment case to potential federal criminal charges." A chilling satisfaction settled over Elena. Sterling Thorne had dug his own grave, and he had provided the shovel. Sterling Thorne, oblivious to the gathering storm, continued his reign of self-congratulation. His office, a shrine to his family's legacy and his own perceived brilliance, was filled with the scent of premium coffee and the hum of his own self-importance. He was in discussions with potential new patron, confident that Elena Vance was a minor inconvenience, swiftly handled. He continued to make subtly disparaging remarks about Elena to other board members, weaving a narrative of her being unstable and opportunistic, unaware that his every word was being diligently documented. Monday morning, the usual quiet before the gallery opened was shattered. Jennifer, a nervous HR assistant, appeared at Sterling's door, her face a mass of panic. "Mr. Thorne, we have a problem. A very serious problem." "What now?" Sterling barked, annoyed. Did Elena hire some cheap lawyer trying to stir up trouble? Jennifer closed the door, her hands shaking. "The Department of Antiquities and Arts Integrity is in the building with federal agents. They want to talk to you about systematic discriminatory practices. A federal investigation." Sterling's blood ran cold. "What are you talking about? This is absurd." At that moment, the door opened and two imposing federal agents from the DI entered, followed by Mr. Arthur Thorne, Viridian CEO and Sterling's father, who looked as though he had aged 10 years overnight. His face was a thundercloud of fury and disbelief. "Mr. Thorne, the lead agent," Special Agent Ramirez said, showing her badge. "I'm with the DI. We'd like to ask you some questions about your management and acquisition practices, specifically concerning allegations of widespread discrimination within the Viridian collection." Sterling tried to maintain his composure, but a tremor ran through his hand as he reached for his coffee. Of course, but I don't understand why this is necessary. These are baseless rumors. Let's start here, then. Agent Ramirez said, placing a tablet on the desk. She tapped it, and Sterling's voice, clear and arrogant, filled the room. Asterisk, the problem with people like them is that they don't understand appropriate boundaries. They grow up thinking they deserve the same treatment as people who have actually built something in life. Asterisk, Sterling's face drained of color. That was taken out of context. I was talking about... And this one, another audio clip began to play. Asterisk, a single Afro-Latina conservator against a respected white board member. The courts may be more sensitive these days, but the reality is that credibility still matters. Asterisk, Arthur Thorne stood up abruptly, his voice shaking with paternal rage. Sterling, for God's sake, tell me you didn't say that. But the worst was yet to come. Agent Ramirez slid a thick stack of documents across the table. These are transcripts of your phone conversations from the last 6 months, Mr. Thorne, all legally obtained through a court order, based on a detailed complaint of systematic discrimination against the Viridian Collection, and specifically against you. Sterling leafed through the papers with growing horror. Every racist comment, every discriminatory decision, every dismissive word he had uttered, documented, with date, time, and context. Who provided this, he stammered. Ms. Alara Vance. Agent Ramirez replied calmly, along with irrefutable evidence that you orchestrated a false accusation against her based solely on racial prejudice, including security system records from your own building showing that you, yourself, took that compromising photo at your home 3 hours after Ms. Vance safely left you at your door. The revelation hit Sterling like a physical blow. Alara had documented everything. The security cameras in his own high-rise, which he had always seen as his bastion of privacy, had betrayed him. Furthermore, Agent Ramirez continued, we have forensic records showing you illegally accessed the HR system multiple times to alter performance reviews and promotion tracks of conservatives of color, systematically lowering their scores to justify denying them advancement. Arthur Thorne erupted, his voice echoing through the silent office. Sterling, you have compromised the entire collection. Our federal grants, our reputation, our legacy. You've ruined everything. Sterling opened his mouth to protest, but his father cut him off. There is no explanation. You're fired, effective immediately. The Viridian Collection will cooperate fully with this investigation. The fallout was swift and devastating. Sterling Thorne was not only fired but arrested and charged with federal offenses, including conspiracy to commit discrimination, wiretapping violations. Unbeknownst to him, his internal company calls were routed through servers Alara had flagged for irregular activity, making her recordings of his calls admissible under certain conditions related to federal investigations of systematic corporate misconduct and fraudulent manipulation of HR data tied to federal diversity reporting mandates. The Viridian Collection, a pillar of the art world for over a century, was plunged into a maelstrom of scandal. Federal inquiries, immense fines, and a complete overhaul of its executive leadership board and HR practices became inevitable. Alara Vance, whose name had been dragged to the mud just days before, was not merely reinstated. She received a formal, public apology from a shaken Arthur Thorne, accompanied by substantial compensation for emotional distress and lost wages. More importantly, she was promoted to the newly created position of Director of Conservation and Ethical Practices, a role that recognized her unparalleled expertise and, perhaps more significantly, her unwavering integrity. She had not only saved the collection from its own internal corruption, but had become its most unlikely savior and moral compass. Dr. Kenji Tanaka called her, his voice brimming with pride. You didn't just preserve art, Alara, You preserve the very soul of what a cultural institution should represent. Under new leadership, the Viridian Collection began a painstaking journey of reform. Ilera, now a prominent voice, played a pivotal role in shaping genuine diversity and inclusion initiatives, ensuring that merit, not privilege or prejudice, dictated opportunities. The gallery, once a bastion of exclusivity, began to open its doors wider, embracing a broader range of artistic perspectives and fostering a truly inclusive environment. Ilera, finally secure, immersed herself in her revitalized work, her hands still stained with pigments, but her spirit unburdened. Her new position granted her the stability and influence she needed to build a bright future for Leo. She found joy in the simple moments, helping him with a science fair project, reading him bedtime stories, and explaining the nuances of civil rights history, drawing parallels to her own recent battle. "Mama," Leo had asked one evening, his eyes wide, "why do some people think they're better than others just because of where they come from?" Ilera smiled, thinking of Sterling Thorne, now a disgraced figure. "Sometimes, sweetie, people who have never had to fight for anything important in their lives forget that we are all equal. They mistake their easy path for superiority. And what do we do then?" Leo asked, ever the inquisitive scholar. Ilera hugged him close. "We show them they're wrong, Leo, with intelligence, with patience, with irrefutable evidence. And always by doing the right thing. Because the truth, my love, is like a beautiful painting. Eventually, its true colors always come out." Months later, Ilera stood in the newly renovated wing of the Viridian Collection, overseeing an exhibition celebrating underrepresented artists. Leo visited, excitedly pointing to a painting he'd helped his mom restore. Ilera watched him, a quiet smile of profound satisfaction on her face. It wasn't a smile of revenge, but of hard-won peace. She had learned that patience and preparation were worth more than 1,000 angry words, and that sometimes the best response to injustice is to give the unjust enough rope to hang themselves. The unseen canvas of justice, once obscured by prejudice and arrogance, had finally been revealed vibrant and true,